Hello, this is Cotton Stoops and welcome back to another Lumion Legacy HTC video, and today's video is on Dakuda, specifically Dakuda's Soul Burst Overcharged Dakuda. What's so great about Dakuda is that it's going to be a staple on a lot of offensive teams because of how much power it actually dishes out, so let's talk about that. In this video, I'm going to be talking about how to use and counter Dakuda, from the counters and checks and teammates that you'll need to know to use Dakuda in the matches super effectively, as well as the roles and sets in order to team build around Dakuda. Today's video is all about how to use and counter Dakuda. So the role that Dakuda is going to play is a very simple question to answer, and we can answer with its base stats. Unlike its regular form, Dakuda is not going to be hitting that hard on the melee attack side. Its speed stat is somewhat on the okay side of the things. This does let you outspeed all the walls in the game with minimal investment, but this does also mean you will also get outsped by many offensive Lumions in this metagame. So Dakuda has the ability to be revenge killed pretty easily. But you do have a decent energy stat to make up for it, as you can throw out a bunch of moves, and while your defensive stats are somewhat on the mediocre or average side of the things, you have a great HP stat of 114 to make up for that, and you have a monstrous range attack stat of 152. This is the second highest range attack stat on base stats alone in the game, just only being out-rivaled by Gargolem attack. So Dakuda is going to be hitting very hard even without much investment. And this is even more compounded to the fact that when you have its offensive coverage intact, you're going to be hitting water, metal, air, electric, earth, and fire for all super effective stab damage. Water types are really plentiful in this metagame. You have opposing Dakudas, Cleones I'm really sure, and of course Luminami and Barblast and Deladrix. So those are a lot of water types you can hit super effectively. Metal types, Valkyrie and Stratosaur are mainly going to be the metal types you're going to be able to hit super effectively. Air types, mainly only Wintrix and Gargolem attack. You're going to be able to hit those super effectively, or not Gargolem attack, but only really Wintrix. Earth types, they're also somewhat common, but not too common. You only really have Gargolem defense and Himber to take advantage of that. And of course, your electric type, you do get to hit not other Dakudas, but Halvantics and Metatoads and Iliguanas all super effectively. And of course, you can hit other fire types such as the Soul Burst, Krakaloas, and Eruptodons all super effectively. So what does this actually mean for Dakuda? Well, Soul Burst will be playing a very good role on Dakuda, as this will give Dakuda the wall breaking potential we'll need to break through walls and other offensive Lumions. And it also does have great defenses, so Dakuda is going to be taking a lot of hits for a team and can also play somewhat of a defensive role. And even though it does have great defenses, it is still prone to revenge killing, but this is kind of a given for any type of slow Lumion. So with that out of the way, let's talk about the sets for Dakuda. So I'm going to be explaining a speed set. I won't really recommend this over the other set, but this does let you outspeed some notable threats. Your ability will be anything to Railgun, because most of your abilities aren't really the best, and Railgun is just plain damage boosts and is the only ability you'll be getting with your Soul Burst. And your personality will be pure smart. The reason why it's not smart frail is because we might be using that melee attack stat soon in the future to hit other future Lumions on the weak defense stat, and because our melee attack stat is high enough, we can try and do that, but as long as you can get a smart personality, this is going to be fine for the metagame. And your moveset is going to be Tsunami, Thunderstrike, Gamma Pulse, and Energize. Energize is mainly so we can beat Lumions such as Venilin and Pyrolin with setup, and of course it will also let us 2-hit KO both of them after a +1 Energize. Tsunami and Thunderstrike, there are stab moves, and Gamma Pulse here is mainly so we can stop spirit types from swapping into our Thunderstrikes, and of course just overall coverage. And for your TPs, 64 energy here, it's mainly for 275 energy. This is very simple. You can use 1 Energize and 5 Thunderstrikes or Gamma Pulses, so that's also pretty nice. Your HP stat is going to be the leftovers, while your range attack and speed are going to be maxed out in order to outspeed as much as you can and hit as hard as possible. This speed stat will allow you to outspeed very brawny Boroks and very smart Valkyries, so that is something to take into account. And of course, your bulky set is going to be also running the ability Railgun. And just to know that this bulky set actually does live 3-hit KOs from Halvantics, Zulongs, and Deladrixes. So Dakuda will have even better matchups against those Lumians which can threaten the speed set out. Our personality here will be pure smart. It's mainly so we can deal as much damage as possible. And our moveset will be the same, while our TPs will be somewhat different. If I remember correctly, the energy is for 2 energizes, 2 tsunamis or gamma pulses, and 2 tsunamis, if I'm remembering correctly. So that is also something very great. And for your HP stat, it's to max that out, and with the range defense, you're going to be able to have Zulong 3-hit KO you, and of course you do 1-hit KO Zulong back, so that is also very nice. And your speed stat of 40, it's mainly because we can actually outspeed non-sluggish Stratosaurs, not the Soul Burst ones, the tanky ones, which are probably going to be common in this metagame. So that's pretty good for your speed stat, and of course put the remainder of 200 range attack into your range attack stat, obviously, so you can hit as hard as possible. So with that out of the way, let's talk about Dakuda's offensive counters and checks as well as its teammates. So offensive counters and checks are going to be really simple for Dakuda, as you're going to be wanting to run offensive plant types that can swap in on any of its coverage moves. Totab, Nevermare, and Colossotrops, they're all great examples of this. Colossotrops being the main one because it does have the bulk to withstand pretty much anything, and it is 4-hit KO on most moves, so Colossotrops is great for that reason. If you want to run Earth Lumians or Earth coverage like Eruptodon and Borok just so you can try and outspeed Dakuda, you can of course try and do that as well. You can also use other Earth types such as Boneki and Himber to try and check it, but Himber does get undersped, so that is also kind of an issue. Also, other plant types in general, they're just pretty great for that. And Dokomori here, specifically the very clever water absorb set that I said in my Dokomori video, it's going to be able to wall Dakuda very well. And even if your Dakuda is going to be melee, I'm pretty sure Dokomori will still be able to wall melee Dakudas. And for your offensive and defensive teammates, mainly you're going to be wanting to run stuff like Shachi. Shachi breaks a lot of the answers that I've said previously, and of course using ice types and fire types for the plant types are great ideas. Using Glacadia and Ikazune, they're really good against those Lumians. And just for Lumians like Totab and Zulong, because they do get opened up by the Lumians that Dakuda can break, for example, Venolin, Pyrolin, Obsidian, Barblast, etc. These 2 Lumians will be able to get opened up by Dakuda and will be able to start sweeping the early or mid game once Dakuda breaks its answers. And finally, its defensive stuff. Cleone is going to be one of the best matchups with Dakuda, mainly because Dakuda doesn't really want to take hits, and if you're using the bulky set with screens on, then it's just going to be able to tank a lot of hits and start setting up energizes really early and dish out damage. Pyrolin is also a good defensive teammate, specifically more robust variants of Pyrolin, mainly because it can deal with the bulky, or not bulky, but the melee attacking plant types such as Nevermare, Totab, and Colossotrops. Sadly, Soul Burst Krakaloa doesn't work unless you're giving up Soul Burst Dakuda, which is honestly not worth it in my opinion. And of course, you do have the Baffle users such as Yursnack and Icicle, and you can even put in Dokomori, which can also baffle Dakuda in, and of course, help it just get into the battle much more easier. So with that out of the way, let's talk about the conclusion and my thoughts on Dakuda. So overall, Dakuda looks to be a very solid Lumian in today's metagame, because it doesn't have access to valuable personalities, and of course, it doesn't have the coverage for plant types, and it is still pretty slow. Dealing with Dakudas are going to be enough. You don't really have the X factor of Magnify like Eruptodon, but you definitely do have the enough damage output to still brick your answers. You still break Venilin and Pyrolin after an Energize, and you pretty much break any ranged wall in front of you, so that is going to be very great for your case. Another thing that I want to mention is that it's probably not the strongest roamer. The roamer that I'm going to be talking about next, the Glacadia, is going to be much more stronger than this, but overall, Dakuda, if you want to use something that hits hard on turn 1 and has the ability to just set up damage even further, then Dakuda is the Lumion you want to go to. If you found this video informational and you want to see more, of course like the video and subscribe. I'll be doing other Atlantean City Part 2 content, specifically on the Soul Bursts and the other new Lumions, so stay tuned for that. This is Stoops signing off to remind you that Zulong is still a dumpster fire.